Are we expecting any of the others? I know Bill's in New York. Me, for some reason, they say, oh, the elevators. Me, for some reason, they say, I guess I got the bookers over here. I guess I just booked. Right. Right. Oh, that's
Anyone else know for warning? Anyone else know for warning?
Memphis is like, there are two burgers, there are 20 spaces in restaurants that have a special unique burger. They're all $5.99. Actually, I should say 5 days. Actually, I should say 5 days. You already did it. You already did it. Yes. Soulboard. Soulboard. Because, you know, because,
Well, I've seen it. What he said in court. I mean, this man. Did they rule? So we don't know. How do you think I did that? I was trying to tie it into it was intentional. You know?
Accidentally ran into somebody who was trying to
Is anybody like that?
Testing. You guys hear me? Testing. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping rules, or notes rather. Restrooms, if you go out this door, you go right and then left and left. You'll see the restroom. It's 6 o'clock, so we're going to get started. First and foremost, I want to say thank you and welcome for coming out on this evening. I want to first also note and say thank you to Pastor Turner, Dr. Turner, who at Mississippi Boulevard Christian Church has been very, very gracious with allowing us to be here on this evening. So again, many thanks to Pastor Dr. Turner and Ms. Boone and the entire MBCC team. Let me introduce myself. I'm Ed Stanton III. I'm the former U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Tennessee, a lifelong Memphian, proud graduate of Central High School and Memphis State and now University of Memphis undergrad and law school. We'll introduce the team that I have, the monitoring team, shortly that we have here on this evening. But before we get started, I want to kind of, you may say, well, why are we here? What's kind of the guidepost or the rationale of having a community engagement forum? How do we get here? Many of you all may know that on last year, there was a trial, the ACLU versus the city of Memphis, and it dealt with something called the Kendrick Consent Decree. That decree, at the trial, that is, the court judge, federal court, district court judge Jon McCalla found that the city had violated certain portions of the Kindred Consent Decree. That decree was entered into by the city of Memphis in 1978. So at that point, roughly 40 years later, that the court made this ruling for a 40-year-old consent decree. Part of the judge's ruling as sanctions to the city last year was that he wanted to appoint an independent monitor to monitor the city of Memphis, and particularly with the MPD, to make sure that it is in compliance with the consent decree. And you guys don't mind, I'll just kind of step out a little bit, but the consent decree itself, without getting into all of the weeds, and I will say this, please go, if you have not seen, MemphisPDmonitor.com. We've set up a website, MemphisPDmonitor.com. In fact, as a part of our role in being transparent and having accountability, right now, if you go to that website, it should be streaming live, and tonight's forum will also be archived and placed on the website for those that would like to go back and maybe could not have been here this evening. But in essence, the court found that in the consent decree that there were certain items and things that the city, protocols and procedures that the city would put in place to avoid quote-unquote political intelligence. In ruling that the city had violated those portions of the agreement, one portion of the sanctions was that the city, that the court would have independent monitoring. And he appointed me late last December of 2018. Along with myself serving as a monitor, there's a monitoring team, again, who I'll introduce shortly, that we have since early this year, 2019, January of 2019, we've been working literally weekly and around the clock to ensure compliance. I'll kind of give an update of what that means, compliance with the section that the court said the city cannot violate the consent decree and conduct political intelligence where it meets First Amendment, violating the consent decree and then their First Amendment implications of free speech. And we all know that now there's social media, there are body cams, and there are a number of other things that puts that into the foray of potential political intelligence. So let me, at this point, introduce the team so you'll know who is here. Just kind of a backdrop, very briefly, the agenda tonight. I'm going to give an overview, a brief overview of just kind of what we've been doing, what the team's been doing. Next, we will have, after that updated report, we will have representatives from the ACLU of Tennessee. And they were the plaintiffs in the case that was brought and tried last year before Federal Judge Jon McCalla. They will give an updated brief report and remarks on their behalf, and also have here on this evening representatives from the city of Memphis, command staff, and legal department. Anywhere you want to sit, sir? And so we will hear from them as well. And really one of the mainstays of this evening, we want to hear from you. We want to hear, again, so Judge McCalla, when you interviewed me for the monitorship program when it was recommended, one of the things that we put in our proposal was that we would have accountability and transparency with this process. And if the community is not engaged and there's not a trust in the fact of, or the work that we're doing, then it's somewhat null and void on a number of levels. And so one part of this was that we would continue to engage the community. That is why we have the website that's been launched. This is the first of a number of these sessions. The next one will probably be later this year. We're looking at maybe October, but we will be in touch in that regard. So that is the backdrop of kind of why we're here this evening. I'll give an update on the report of kind of what we've done since being appointed by Judge McCalla. But let me first start with our team here. We have a diverse team that's from literally across the country of experts we call subject matter experts. The first is the deputy monitor. This is Jim Ledden to my immediate right. Jim is also a former federal prosecutor. Actually, he was the U.S. attorney in the city of New Orleans, and he has 36 years of being a prosecutor and handling matters as it relates to civil rights and First Amendment, and again, serving as the United States attorney. In fact, at one point, Jim was the longest serving United States attorney, having been appointed by 2 presidents and reappointed, serving in that capacity in New Orleans. So we're happy to have Jim as the deputy monitor of the team. Next to Jim, we have Rachel Levingston Waldman. Rachel is here from Washington, D.C., and Rachel is senior counsel to the Brennan Center's Liberty and National Security Program, also affiliated with NYU. And Rachel is here. She's our social media expert, and she has been active on issues relating to policing and technology, including providing commentary on law enforcement access to social media, predictive policing, body cameras, license plate readers, and other types of surveillance technologies deployed in public. So we're happy to have Rachel to be a part of our team. Sitting to Rachel's right is John Hennigan. And John is our First Amendment expert, subject matter expert. John is a partner of the law firm at Butler Snow, and he resides in the office in Ridgeland, Mississippi, but in the space of First Amendment rights, everything from privacy workshops, media firms, university newspapers. He's been involved, authored a number of different articles published throughout the country, and so he is someone that we lean heavily on in the First Amendment arena as a subject matter expert. Sitting to Mr. Hennigan's right is Aaron Bowman, Dr. Bowman. We call him T. Bowman. And Dr. Bowman is a police law enforcement expert. Dr. Bowman is a former police chief of the Arlington, Texas Police Department. He is a police practices expert and also the president and CEO of the Bowman Group. We're fortunate to have T on board, or Dr. Bowman on board. He has a vast experience serving on monitoring teams in Baltimore, as well as New Orleans, and just recently he was appointed to serve on the monitoring team in Chicago. So again, very, very well versed in depth of experience with Dr. Bowman. And last but certainly not least, to his right is David McGriff. Mr. McGriff, he recently served as the Deputy Commissioner and Chief of Staff of the Department of Safety and Homeland Security here in Tennessee. Mr. McGriff is our audit and compliance expert, and he has a deep background in policing, as he began his esteemed career in law enforcement 44 years ago, and he began as a police officer in Washington, D.C., with the Metropolitan Police Department, District of Columbia. And then he later joined as a Memphis Police Department officer in 1974. So when we talk about audit and compliance and someone to look at the framework of what's being done as we're changing and modifying policies and procedures, Mr. McGriff's role, as all of the panel members, is very critical. So what have we been doing over the last 6-7 months as the monitoring team? Well, what we've been doing is every week we have met, oftentimes video calls, conference calls. We've had in-person meetings here in Memphis. I will say we've met with one of the first meetings we had was with Director Rollins and his command staff and his legal team, the city attorney and his team. And there are a number of pages, thousands of pages of policies, procedures, and protocols as it relates to training, as it relates to social media, searches, reviews, and everything within that space as it relates to political or potential political intelligence pursuant to the Kendrick consent decree. And so what we've been doing before we could do anything and start advising anything, we had to look at the starting point. Let us see the policies that you have in place. I will say that Judge McCalla has been very active, and after the ruling last year, he instructed the city in January of this year to come up with recommended and new policies and procedures to address some of the issues that he felt had been violated in the case ACLU versus the city of Memphis. The court then instructed us to take a look at the recommendations of the city. He allowed the ACLU to weigh in and provide their input. And so we, as a team, have been reviewing those submissions from the city as well as the ACLU and giving ultimately our recommendations. So those are just, we've invited obviously the city and the ACLU for their opinions and their thoughts, but ultimately we, when you say independent, we are an independent body, you can tell from across the country, local and nationally, where we're giving our recommendations ultimately to the court. And again, Judge McCalla has made it clear that we are, should be, quote, eyes and ears of the court. So we don't report to the police department, we don't report to the ACLU, we report our findings directly to Judge McCalla in court. After reviewing a number of, and we're still doing this, so I just want to be clear that this is somewhat early in the process. We're not done. We have got quite a bit accomplished. But after reviewing our first review, if you will, back in February, we met with city officials. And again, we had an opportunity to meet with Director Rollins. He pledged to support Chief Crow and many of the other command staff members. We visited a number of different places that we wanted to see real-time boots on the ground, this entire team. I won't go into all the details of what we've done and who we've met with, but I can tell you it's been extensive. And since then, since we've been appointed, there's not a week that goes by, maybe one or two with holiday weeks, that we have not been on the phone in a conference, either face-to-face, but interfacing with MPD, requesting additional information and documents. And then again, every week we caucus, oftentimes up to 3 or 4 hours, a robust debate as to what we think is in the best interest policy-wise of making sure that the city does not violate the consent decree, Kendrick consent decree going forward. That's our charge. I want to just put a pause right there and make sure I kind of told you what we've been charged with doing, and that is ensuring compliance, that the city does not violate the consent decree going forward. But this is not a widespread, so I want to be clear on this evening of what we have not been charged with. And this is not, while we are the monitors in that space of ensuring that the city does not violate the Kendrick consent decree and conduct, quote, political intelligence. I want to be clear that that is our narrow scope of what the judge has emboldened or instructed us to do. And so I was having a conversation earlier today, and again, we welcome feedback and comment, but again, this is not a clearinghouse where we're monitoring all activities, but we have certain prescribed duties under Judge McCalla's order. So I want to be clear in that regard. So we have continued to review documents, and so where we are now, we have come down the, we'll say, somewhat of a home stretch. We've given a report, and we have a quarterly report. I welcome everyone and invite everyone to go. Many of you just walked in, you didn't hear me earlier, but if you have not looked, MemphisPDmonitor.com. MemphisPDmonitor.com. Wealth of information, everything that we have filed, all of the court, unsealed court rulings, opinions, filings. You can find them all there. There is a place also where we solicit feedback and comments. You can email us. As I mentioned, now we are being streamed real time. So our goal, again, is to be as transparent as possible, as accessible as possible, and as accountable as possible. But if you have not had that opportunity, please go to MemphisPDmonitor.com. We have filed those reports. You'll find our quarterly reports. In fact, we have another report coming up later this month. We have gone before Judge McCalla back in April. He wanted a status update of what we have done, and we shared with the court what we've done, and he also gave us instructions that he wanted a 90-day plan. So Judge McCalla has been very deliberate in making sure we stay on track and meet the goals of ensuring that we have the appropriate training policies, protocols, and procedures in place, and recommendations to the court to adopt. So that is what we've been doing. We have another hearing before Judge McCalla coming on in August, and again, those are open to the public. You can hear from the judge himself as we give our update. At the update that we had for Judge McCalla in April, he also allowed the city of Memphis and had questions for the city and counsel for the city, as well as for the ACLU, to get their input on how things are going and the job that we're doing as the monitoring team. Any questions so far? As far as and I will say this: there will be a opportunity. We'll open the mic up for anyone that has questions. I do want to make the note too that we are live streaming this. So I know there's a sensitivity of cameras and individuals saying we're not asking for a list of names of who's coming in, but our job again is to be as transparent as possible. We know a lot of folks couldn't come tonight, and so that is why we are live streaming this and recording only for those purposes. So again, if and when you speak, the cameras are in the back. If you don't want to turn around and identify your face, if you don't want to give your name, you don't have to. But again, the purpose tonight, the cameras, real time, is again to be as transparent as possible about what we're doing and being able to share that with the community. That is pretty much a brief update of what we've done so far, the role that we have, and again, ensuring that the city does not violate the Kendrick consent decree. And I will tell you this, that it's a lot of what we're dealing with, I would say it's complicated, but there are issues because if you look at 1978 as an example, we didn't have the internet or social media, and so you have somewhat the intersection of legitimate law enforcement practices and surveillance investigations, if you will, as well as balancing that and ensuring that you don't violate, in doing those things, that you don't violate the First Amendment, and even more so the Kendrick consent decree, which the court entered into, or the city entered into back in 1978. And so it's interesting because there's not necessarily a go-by. We can look at this city or this community or this police department and say, we'll just adopt what they're doing. In fact, one of the things Judge McCalla has made clear that hopefully when we get through this process, that we can be, and this community can be a model as to others when they deal and grapple with, again, 21st century policing as opposed to what this looked like back in 1978. So that is the charge that we have. That's kind of a backdrop of what we're doing and where we're headed. Somebody may have the question, how long will this last? Well, that's completely up to the court. This will last and be, and I say this, meaning the consent decree will be in place as long or until or unless the court modifies it or ends it. So that's not our call. Again, as the monitor, we're just that, monitoring and providing and being eyes and ears to the court, but ultimately this matter will be resolved and all the training and everything that we recommend may or may not be adopted by the court, but he's leaning on us. We're leaning on each other as experts or subject matter experts in various areas. I will tell you, when I assembled the team, I wanted the best and the brightest. And so, yes, we have an individual, Mr. McGriff, who's a part of the local law enforcement community and has experience in that regard. But everyone else is actually from outside of Memphis and Shelby County. And that was deliberate to make sure that if we're going to have an independent look and review, that we should have independent eyes with individuals that not only are qualified in this area, but have no vested interest outside of saying we want to get this right as we make our recommendations to the court. So at this point, and again, I want to make sure we have plenty of time, and we will, for questions. At this point, I want to turn it over, and I will ask the plaintiff in this case, the ACLU of Tennessee, if they would come up and again, just share any remarks or comments that they would like to. They just drove over from Nashville, so they made it on time. And it looks like Brandon Tucker, and also Mandy, wave your hand. Mandy Floyd is also an attorney for the ACLU, the plaintiffs in this case that involves the Kendrick consent decree. Brandon?
Mr. Stanton, thank you. Monitoring team. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brandon Tucker, Policy Director for the ACLU of Tennessee. My remarks this evening are for this audience here and viewing online, not for the monitor, but from the ACLU of Tennessee to community members present here today and viewing here today. I'm grateful to be amongst you all and encouraged that this matter isn't only viewed as one between the Memphis Police Department and some of the community's strongest activists. Though Memphis Police Department's violation of the consent decree is what got us here today with a monitoring team seeking input from you all, these violations between MPD and activists goes beyond those who call them out. It affects the people outside of this room and community members throughout the city, whether they know it or not. The ACLU of Tennessee has advocated tirelessly in protection of the First Amendment rights through our work in legislatures and courts and communities. What we found time and time again is that those exercising the very right we continuously seek to protect have themselves fallen sacrificed even greater, and we thank you. Leaders and members of organizations that advocate for communities of color, organizations advocating for LGBT communities and immigrants' rights communities, people who testified to the court like Reverend and Dr. Earl Fisher, Paul Garner, Keedron Franklin, and Elaine Blanchard. They put themselves on the line. Individuals within this audience tonight, and those who cannot make it, and those who are viewing online. You all are the reason the ACLU of Tennessee works tirelessly to protect in protection of our rights. So again, to reiterate what we're doing here today is to correct violations of a consent decree established over 40 years ago which prohibits the city of Memphis from engaging in law enforcement activities which interfere with any person's right protected by the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Violations of our consent decree, spying on political protesters, collection of political intel, tracking activists, all a non-starter. The actions taken by Memphis Police Department can and most likely already have produced a chilling effect on those who choose to exercise their rights in the face of injustice. The right to mobilize, the right to walk into City Hall freely, to organize in the streets or online. The people of Memphis cannot feel emboldened to activate around the city's most pressing issues with the knowledge of or fear of being spied upon. That's what a chilling effect is. The instant you question the appropriateness of exercising your freedoms. This is what the monitoring team must combat. The team is independent, separate from the city, separate from us, separate from the police department. We ask for them. They are accountable to the court and to the community. Today, what they need is to hear from you. What can you do to help? What are your experiences? Their team has legal experts, public policy and First Amendment experts, social media experts, and law enforcement. But what we know and what the monitoring team should know is that the people who live this day-to-day have a lifetime of experience as well. This room and online viewers are experts. I believe the monitoring team is fully aware that your trust must be earned. This is about how you want to be policed. And if you're skeptical, be vocal. And as the monitoring team works to oversee new departmental policy, ensure that officers are trained properly, trying to ensure compliance with the consent decree, the monitoring team should have you all in mind. I close with this. The consent decree is not too broad because our constitutional rights are vast. And it isn't up to the Memphis Police Department or anyone else to experiment with strategies to chip away at them. This is an opportunity for MPD to regain trust, an opportunity to rebuild relationships, and we require respect for our freedom of movement and our freedom of speech. The continued role of the ACLU of Tennessee is to work within the community in building from recent legal victories. Our hope is to work with you following municipal elections. Your elected officials should be listening to you as well and asking themselves if they are doing their part to protect your rights, to ensure your communities aren't surveilled in a discriminatory manner, and to contribute to a more holistic view of how the city's police department should be serving its city. I thank Mr. Stanton, the monitoring team, and all of you here in this room and online. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. All right, and next we'll hear from a representative from the City of Memphis Police Department. I believe it's going to be Chief Don Crow. Chief Crow.
Thank you, Mr. Stanton. Thank you, monitoring team. I am Deputy Chief Don Crow with the Memphis Police Department. Here with me tonight is Deputy Chief Paul Wright. We do want to share with you that we are cooperating with the monitoring team. We want to continue to cooperate with them. We look forward to their guidance, their input. We look forward to their review of our training, our policies, and for making improvements where it's needed. So we do want to continue to make our command staff and all of our officers and all of our records available to you.
Thank you, Chief Crow. And I will tell you, as I mentioned to Judge McCalla at the first status hearing that I mentioned, up until this point, we have had cooperation from the City of Memphis through its legal team and command, Director Rollins and command staff. There have been thousands of pages that we have requested for review. And there have been a number of items, quite frankly, we've disagreed with the city upon, but they've been respectful of the process to this point. And so, Chief Crow, we appreciate that. I'd also be remiss, I introduced our illustrious monitoring team, but also we have two of my colleagues, two attorneys with the firm I practice with, Butler Snow, and my partners, Will Peary. Again, Will has done a phenomenal job with assisting us with the team, excellent work, as well as Chanel Tyler. So our associate, she's also an attorney with the firm. And as you can see, a very diverse team that's been working on this over the past 6.5, 7 months, the monitoring team itself. Again, for those that have just come in, we are streaming this live stream for those that can't be here this evening, so just keep that in mind. But at this point, again, you've heard from me, but we're here to field questions. We're here to provide any input, and again, to be as transparent as legally possible that we can. So I'm going to open it up, and we'll have a mic, and and the reason we need you to speak to the mic, our technical team says they need to make sure the folks that are streaming online as they're capturing this can hear the questions. You don't have to give us your name or any information if you would prefer not to do so. I would ask again that you keep in mind the purview and the confines that we have been given by the court as to what our role is in our job. So it's not we are monitoring the Memphis Police Department, but it's a specific area of the Kindred Consent Decree, and again, to ensure that the MPD is not conducting political intelligence in violation of that decree. So I will open the floor up. And before I do that, I don't know, if anyone on the monitoring team, certainly we'll invite questions, but if someone on the monitoring team wants to add something, if I've left something out about what we've been doing at this point, by all means, you guys have a mic. We will open the floor. Mandy, and Mandy again is from Nashville, one of the lawyers for the ACLU. We'll come to you, sir, next.
I just have a quick suggestion that maybe somebody, whoever's best suited on your team, could go over what the provisions of the consent decree are, so that people in the room can have a really clear understanding of what is covered by the decree.
I'll tell you what, we can maybe pull that up. It's on the website, and I don't want to leave something out. So before we finish tonight, we'll see if we can get that, pull it up online, and go through that, Mandy. But I want to make sure that we don't miss something. So give us just a moment. We'll get those exact points. Point well taken, but I don't want to, unless somebody has it right on, pulled up right now. So give us just a moment to pull that up. Good question. I think, gentleman in the back.
Yes, I don't need a mic.
No, yeah, actually you do. Just
Need a mic so the people that's streaming live can hear you. So, yes, we get it.
Yeah, how you doing? My question is, what is the timeline for you guys, and if this is in your respective area, for you guys to meet with community members who actually been directly or vicariously affected by the violation of the Kindred Law?
Okay, would you repeat the question just one more time, sir?
Yes, is there a timeline for the monitoring team to meet with community organizers or community members who have been directly or vicariously affected by the violation of the Kindred Law?
Yeah, that's a good question, sir. The question is there a timeline for us to meet with members of the community directly or vicariously impacted by the consent decree? That is what we're doing now, and I will tell you, we got started in January, and before meeting with the community, we wanted to make sure we got our marching instructions from Judge McCalla first. We've had our first, report in federal court to him. And even before doing this, we had to check in with the court. We had put in our plan that we wanted to have a community engagement forum and forums. We wanted to have a website. We've done those things, but before we were able to do either of those, we had to get the approval of the court. So to answer your question, this is the first of what we believe be multiple community engagement forums. But in the meantime, and I keep referencing our website, MemphispDMonitor.com, MemphispDMonitor.com. We solicit input. You're welcome to email and provide input in that regard. But to answer your question, this is the first part of that process.
So there is no timeline.
A timeline?
There's no timeline.
It's up to the court. The court has not given us a timeline. I mentioned, you may not have been here, I mentioned earlier, this will go on as long or until or unless Judge McCalla modifies and tells us to stop doing what we're doing. And a part of what we're doing is what we're doing tonight.
I think what he's saying is you haven't reached out to anybody in the community
Well, he heard what I'm saying,
who was impacted by this, and this was scheduled like on the same day as a police review board meeting that happens on the same time every month. I don't know that this team put out a press release or did any real community outreach. I mean, look at this room. It should be.
All right, and the concern for those that may be online is saying that perhaps that this was deliberately set on a date when something else was going on, or that the press release didn't go out. I will tell you, we sent a press release out over a week ago. We sent another press release out early this week. We shared the press release with the ACLU, and I talked to the director. He said there are over 2,000 contacts, and they would make sure that they would disseminate that to their contacts, the plaintiffs here. And so again, I'm not sure that there's a perfect night, and if you feel that I'm not answering your question, I'm sorry? Okay. You said how long will this last? And with
I didn't ask that. I asked that you guys create a timeline.
To reach out to people like us.
People up there. If y'all create a timeline,
that's what we're doing tonight, sir.
it should have been done. Is all
Well, and I will tell you that we work
I
at
didn't
the
get an
will.
invitation from y'all, I got an invitation from the ACLU. And I'll have my card. I gave to every person I could at the last hearing a card. But I recall the judge was pretty unhappy about your community engagement strategy, so.
We have a copy. You're welcome to look at the transcript. That you can find that online. But again, everything we've done, sir, and everything that we will do will have to be at the approval of the court. And so we cannot go out and solicit or do anything. We could not put up a website. We could not issue a press release. We could not have a community forum without giving Judge McCalla all of the details of what we wanted to do, when, where, and how. And so, again, this is tonight, I mean, again, this is an open forum, and I appreciate each of you being here and sharing your comments. Is it perfect? No, but again, we solicit your input. Is there a perfect night to do this? I'm not sure that it is, but that is, that's where we are with regard to community engagement. And I will mention again, this is the first of multiple events, so long as the court authorizes us to continue. I would welcome you to solicit, to provide the website that I keep mentioning. You mentioned transparency and access. There are the means that we're taking right now to stream this live. Those are the types of things that we are taking into account to make sure that the public is made aware. I think this gentleman here.
I don't necessarily believe that, and I believe you earnestly, wholeheartedly try, but I don't think you necessarily written the way you're saying clearly. A lot of us, first and foremost, are very frustrated, especially of those who've been directly impacted by this decree and the violation of Memphis Police Department as it relates to. And so I think what my friend in the back, Paul, are asking is there an effort to reach out to those who are directly affected by this versus hosting these broad, general community events? Because we get enough of those from the mayor, we get enough of those from the city. I think we just need to know, and I'm on that list as well. I think we just need to know that there is going to be transparency even on your side, and we need to know whose side you guys are on. And we just need to have that understood in the beginning and not these glamorous events such as these, because we're not looking for another political press meeting. We're just looking for truth and transparency, because right now it doesn't look well, because there's a clerk meeting happening down the street about something that happened that should be monitored as well. And so we're wondering if you guys should be there, and we should be all there, or should everyone be here? I think the strategy could have been strategized a bit better, so that way the transparency that you guys want us to buy would have been more affordable.
I think they're on the police side.
Okay, I have a mic.
Wait, just a second. Let me just respond very briefly to the gentleman here. Again, we work for the court. The court issued an order and named the monitor. The court, there was a hearing that was open for the court. The media was there, and it's unfortunate. This is not my first time having a community forum. You can check my credentials and my reputation and record as it relates to community service and engaging the community even when it's not popular. As U.S. Attorney, again, I stand on my record. And so I invite and welcome the comments. Do not take it personally. But when we had a court hearing, I can tell you it was a fraction of the people here that was made public. And so that is, we can't force individuals to be here. I can tell you tonight's record, and this event was planned several weeks and months ago. But again, we could not announce anything until Judge McCalla made it and gave us the approval. We welcome your comments. I think I saw another hand. She's at a mic. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. My name is Barbara Burris, self-proclaimed activist here in Memphis. I wanted my comments to be directed directly to the ACLU lawyers and the monitoring team, if they like. But I want to give direct examples of what it is that we're going through with our social media accounts. To my left is Frank Gotti. Me and him are like brother and sister. We fight for justice together, and when we do our live videos, they're interrupted. Most of the time, right at 4 minutes, everything's cut. They're pixelated. We're not able to contact each other at all. Our notifications are being turned off daily. Our see first buttons are being turned off as well. Our friends, we have thousands of friends, a bunch of us have thousands of friends, and they can't reach us. We're hearing music in our backgrounds. Our homes are being monitored by actual police officers. And I wanted to know if this are things that the monitoring team is aware of and is in a violation of the decree.
So in this case, we received tens of thousands of pages of documents from the Memphis Police Department that our legal team reviewed. And so I'm very aware of the things that were happening by the Memphis Police Department. I'm so grateful that you were here to share those things with us. These are exactly the types of things that people in this room and people who are watching should bring to the monitoring team. Things that are, when things happen to you that need to be shared with the monitoring team that are related to surveillance. And a little later on, we're going to go through the consent decree so everyone knows exactly what's covered. Bring those things to the monitoring team. It is their job to listen to you and to be aware of what's happening in the community. So thank you.
Yes, and I'd also like to invite every last one of them to one of my 5 pages because I'm being monitored on at least 4, but I just had to make a new one last night. So I invite you all to send me a friend request, and then you'll get my lives and you'll see what it is exactly that I'm talking about.
I know we have another question, but one thing that I would recommend, I know we've heard a lot of, we've heard some statements about what we could or should be doing. I would recommend, because the ACLU, they were the plaintiffs in the case, right? And they brought the case. So I know people say we have a distrust or we have some concerns. But I would submit, and I would, if you were at the hearing, when Judge McCalla asked the question, tell us about the monitoring team, tell us the work that they're doing. You can ask Ms. Floyd here today, who is not biased, I don't think, and again, she's a plaintiff in this case. She lives in Nashville, about the work that we're doing and how we've been receptive to their input. And again, it's a lot of work that we're doing. I'm proposing this as it relates to dates, as it relates to information. If you don't feel comfortable sending it to me or to the monitoring team or on the website, share that information with Ms. Floyd, with the ACLU. And they have a way, lawyer to lawyer, to get to us what we need. And again, go to someone you trust, and that's why we invited the ACLU to be here today. If you have concerns about what we're doing, speak to the counsel for the ACLU. And I think she and they will tell you directly what we've been doing over the past 6 to 7 months. Have we gotten it perfect? No. Are we where we're trying to get to? No. But I think we have done a yeoman's job with trying to make sure that we have captured the spirit of what Judge McCalla has asked us to do by being the monitoring team and making sure that the consent decree is not violated. So these specific instances, if you don't feel comfortable with sharing with us, if we don't know, we can't do anything about it. I also want to go back and make sure you understand that we have to only work within the purview. And so when you hear Memphis monitor, that says something, but we have to and only can monitor what the court has given us instructions to do. We have to fall in line with what the court has told us to do. So again, I welcome you to share your comments, concerns, questions, any information that you don't feel comfortable sharing tonight, sharing online. How many of you all have been online? Okay, so that's good. And you will see there are 3 different ways that you can submit information if you want to do it anonymously. You can mail it, if you can drop it off in my office, hand deliver it, or you can go on the website. In fact, we say that we recommend that email is the preferred method. And so again, we can't fix what we don't know, and we can't do anything outside the confines of what Judge McCalla has given us the authority to do. Who's next? Yes, sir.
I guess I have a question. So traditionally, it's the multi-agency gang unit that arrests activists, and that's a conglomeration of Memphis Police Department, Shelby County Sheriff, U.S. Marshals, FBI, TBI.
ICE.
Well, I don't know about, but all of them. So since the lawsuit is in regards to NPD, do y'all have access to all the multi-agency gang unit files since it falls under several different law enforcement agencies? Since they're the ones that seem to be targeting us and arresting us.
And I guess you're, from a political intelligence standpoint, is that?
Yes.
And we know that the sheriffs aren't just doing NPD's work for them.
I mean, almost every time I'm Hunter Dempster, by the way. Almost every time I've been arrested, it's been by the multi-agency gang unit, and same with Keith and a lot of the rest of it. So I'm just curious if y'all even have access to the necessary information.
That's how they hide.
Now, look on his face.
Can he answer the question?
When you say access to the information, I want to, so let me be clear. Tonight, we want to hear, and I appreciate you sharing this. So we are listening, we're taking notes with regard to the concerns. And our goal is, again, to ensure that the MPD is not violating the consent decree.
Okay, well, let me like give an example for a story that's happened this month, in which would have been important to meet with the activists who were directly affected. Like, I don't know if this falls under political intelligence. So I'm at my house where I'm registered at. I'm kind of off in a cut smoking a cigarette. I see a unmarked police car that's about 10 to 15 years old pull up in front of the house, stop in front of the driveway. The police officer doesn't see me, so I walk out in the yard, and I have it all on camera. And I ask him, I'm like, what are you doing? And he gets out of his car, comes on my property, and tells me he's looking in my neighbor's driveway. But he's parked directly in front of my driveway. It seemed very inappropriate and caught me off guard. You can imagine in light of this federal lawsuit. So we do a FOIA request to get his duty log. The official response is he's off duty. But he's in full organized crime unit, multi-agency gang unit gear. A month goes by. I talk about it for the very first time on social media in the comment thread of a post. The next day, we get a phone call that says, oh, we made a mistake. He was on duty. The duty log that I got, it has fresh ink, chicken scratch, that does not match the rest of the duty log. Is that political surveillance, or is that police intimidation? Are they one and the same?
So let me just say this. Share that information. This is the first minute. We can't do anything.
This is my first opportunity, like you said.
And that's, I'm glad someone's taking advantage as opposed to sharing the information. We can't do anything if we don't know about the concerns that you're voicing.
I will send you all those documents, the video, and everything. And that's just one example.
And so to answer your question, is that political intelligence? Possible. I don't want to tell you it is. I can't tell you that it isn't without knowing more facts. But we can't do anything as a monitoring team without input from the community. So this is the first session tonight. We're looking for solutions. And so again, if you could share with us, and again, and I keep going back to, if you don't feel comfortable sharing it with me, share it with counsel for the ACLU. Does anyone have a problem sharing it with counsel for the ACLU? They're the plaintiffs. I'm just, and sir, I'm asking you to share that with me. And I'm saying if you don't share that with me, if you don't feel comfortable, you have another avenue.
I would like one to say who's as upset as me. Y'all are so cool and chill about this. This is our lives. We're the monitors saying who's mad as we are. We need people from this community on the monitors saying. That's right. Y'all not affected by this. I am. I got PTSD. I can't sleep at night. That's right. Y'all don't. Y'all sleep well at night.
I see another hand here. Yes, sir.
Y'all scream and trust y'all, but like at the end of the day,
Yeah, get the mic.
like Keith just said, y'all scream and trust y'all, but y'all don't know what we go through. Like on straight up and down, just being real. Like we out here every day. Really, to be honest with you, most of us are doing the job that the police doing. We're trying to bring a solution to this crime, to these kids dying, and we still like me and my brother be on the phone discussing like, hey, let's push over to this crime scene. We just heard little Ray just got killed. Our phones are cut off. And he'll call me back like, hey, what happened to your phone? I'm like, man, my phone's in the car. I ain't touched no button. It's like everything. Like, if they done it once, they'll do it twice. So y'all saying trust y'all, what's different from them screaming trust them?
And sir, I understand your concern, and I say if you don't trust me, yes, we're saying trust me.
Trust is earned. Like,
Okay. And I'm saying until we earn your trust, sir, I would welcome you to share with someone that I believe everyone raised their hand or didn't raise their hand, said who does not trust the ACLU attorney here. They're the people, they're one of the reasons why we're in this room today, because they brought a
Keith
lawsuit.
said, like the things we go through, pretty much everybody in this room who's been labeled active or consider themselves active, we call vitamins. Like you just said, y'all cool, man. Like y'all, it's not a bar. Like you just said, we want people that know that this ain't right. We want people that know that, hey, we wouldn't take a stand for you. You know what I mean? Come on, just screaming it and don't mean it. Hey, it's a waste of time. Like you saying, trust you, but what like you said from the beginning of this meeting, you said y'all have done a lot and got a lot coverage of what y'all have been y'all been covered. But at the end of the day, if you know what you've been covered and you see what's going on, this meeting here should have been when they just brought up the situation with Barbara Birds getting tackled by police officers. Like, come on, you're gonna be real. Don't come halfway, come all the way correct.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
sir. First of all, I just want to recognize the intensity right now that's in this room. And just second what people have said. You know, the people that are raising their voices right now are not doing it because they like to do it. Right? They're not Facebook warriors. They're real people who've been affected in real ways for a long time in the city. The consent decree is older than most of the people in this room. This is a long tradition. My name is Tony DeVelasco. I'm a professor of political rhetoric. I mentored a student who actually did an entire project on this. It was an honors project. And I'll share it with the group. He has a whole timeline of political surveillance in this city. But let's keep it to the decree. First of all, how does the decree define political? And how do you interpret what it says? Because I think those are two very different questions. What does it say, and how do you all interpret it? Because most of what I hear when the police department talks about why they've done these things seems to me to play very delicate games with the name, with the idea of political surveillance. So what does it say, and how do you interpret it? Because words don't speak for themselves.
This is Jim Lenton here. I don't, admittedly, right now, I do not have the consent decree printed before me. We're operating off of it. That's our mission, is to ensure that this police department operates, collects evidence, carries out law enforcement within the confines of the restrictions of that consent decree. Political intelligence, and I'm telling you, this is from someone, if I may, sir. Political intelligence is something completely different from collecting evidence of crimes, evidence of possible danger to citizens. Political intelligence, in essence, is the collection or gathering of information, whether that's communications of individuals, whether that's the activities of individuals, whether that's the identities of individuals, for a purpose that falls outside a legitimate law enforcement purpose. So let's say for a political end, for a political or ideological end. It is something that we in the United States, whether it's the military, whether it's federal law enforcement, local, state law enforcement, any government, we are precluded from collecting against U.S. persons or against individuals in this country to the extent that it does interfere, and if we collect it for political purposes, it is not consistent with the First Amendment of the Constitution. It can interfere with First Amendment rights in terms of communication, in terms of ideology, etc. So, for instance, if a department, a police department, collects the names of individuals that individuals in that department believe are ideologically, let's say they just don't like their ideological positions. Let's say they don't like their politics. Let's say that they're uncomfortable with the activities of that person politically, and they want to be able to surveil that person, find out what that person's doing, and perhaps interfere with that person's exercise of those rights. Political intelligence is that kind of conduct that no law enforcement entity, no government subdivision in the United States has a right to collect, to gather, to use. And what our goal is, our mission, it's not just our goal, our mission is to work with the ACLU, to work with the department, to work with the police department of the city, and to work, as Ed said, as Mr. Stanton said, the eyes and ears of the court, not to do internal investigations, not to do enforcement, to make certain that going forward, that this department is able to protect public safety, is able to gather intelligence of actual criminal conduct, and not do it at the expense of anyone's First Amendment rights, and not gather information or intelligence that you have a right to expect privacy regarding, that you have a to collect information that involves your beliefs, your ideology, etc. We have to make sure that occurs. We have to protect constitutional rights, and we have to do it without degrading or harming their ability to keep you and your children and your neighbors safe. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I had the mic first. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Sorry.
Let me. My name is Jay Worth. I represent GKP, a multimedia company here in the city, as well as I'm concerned with a lot of these things. The first thing I'll say, sir, with respect to you, to be on a board and to stand before people and to say you don't even know the decree that you're talking about is a problem. Sir, I didn't interrupt you. Let me say this with respect to you. And let me say this. There's a such thing, first off, there's a professional way. And for you to have this be the inaugural whatever meeting that you're going to have, the last thing I will probably say is I don't know what I'm here to discuss.
I didn't say that.
And you said you did. You couldn't quote it. Let me leave that though. Let me leave that because I think the problem is, first off, when you talk about building trust, and I've heard a lot of the people speak here, the thing about it is, you brought it up and now it's developed. A lot of times the community, like my brother earlier spoke, does not know anything about it till you pop it up or till you have these impromptu meetings in an hour and a half, what can you really get done, and how it's like y'all have these things privatized. You want to build trust, but there's nobody from the community sitting on this board. There's nobody from the community on the ACLU board. When is the community going to really be involved outside of being invited to meetings to listen to y'all tell us what we already know is going on? When is there going to be the meetings where people actually have a voice, have a position? There should be some community people sitting up there. There should be some people from the community. When you had focus groups to develop this, you should have involved some of the community people. And I think that's a problem. If you want to build trust, then you have to be fully transparent. Don't just be transparent behind the closed doors, but have focus group meetings with the community prior to making up things like this that you disguise as being able to help the community when we never really see the help.
Or refer back to the court. Or the court did this and the court did that. I have been where it's been many cases where we've been to the Supreme Court, and I sat on review boards like this. You guys are all police department. Police retired officers, you gave all your backgrounds, this and that. We know you guys work hand in hand. Not one of you guys up there mentioned anything about the community. Like what brother just said. Mention something about the community.
Because me personally, I don't trust the police. Me personally, I know everybody in this room don't trust the police. MGU, multi-gang unit itself, have a raid in my grandma and my uncle's house on the same street. And during the lawsuit, all of them has skulls on. And you know what the gang unit officer told me? Oh, we the biggest gang in the city. Oh, we don't have to reveal our identity to you. We can do what we want to do. So when you bring that to the community and you create that fire in the community, that's why we fight back and organize like the way we do. You have to build trust. There's no trust in this room. There's no trust. And I want to say this. Quit putting it on the ACLU. The ACLU is here to represent the community.
We the ones who fake, not
Right.
ACLU.
Thank you. All your points are well taken. I want to go back to something you said, sir, very succinctly. And I will welcome you. I will welcome you. You mentioned something about focus groups. You mentioned something about getting community, people from the community engaged. We would like to hear from you. Can I count on you to pull a group of community members together?
Matter of fact, I'll leave my card with you. So you can contact me at any point in time.
Also, I'll put them on the board.
Sir.
That's all on it. Y'all
And let me,
My name is David Ward. I've been listening patiently, and everybody here is making a whole lot of sense. Mr. Stanton.
Excuse me. 1 second, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. All right. Thank you. I'm sorry.
The reason I want this thing on, keep dwelling on the monitor decree. The decree is just focused on one specific area. And I find it a little troubling. I understand your narrow focus, but what you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm an officer and I'm assigned to homicide, and I see while doing this homicide, I see a robbery, I'm supposed to ignore it. So when you say your narrow focus,